In this video, we're going to look at the Pocket 4K's low light capabilities when shooting Blackmagic RAW. Now there will be a second companion low light video when shooting Prores on a Pocket 4K, and that should come out about a week after this one. So please check our channel for that video. So let's get to it. So this is my basic setup for low light testing. It's again a simple studio setup that's repeatable, and again it just gives me a baseline. Now over here I have a black curtain. So besides, being very dark, being black, it does have texture. It has texture in the fabric, and it has highlights, highs and lows, with luminosity, as you can see over here. Right over here is used B-board. Now I'm using a used B-board instead of like white paper, again, because it has texture. If the B-board's not blowing out, if we're not clipping on the highlights, we should be able to see a ton of texture on the surface. And of course, charts. Charts, as boring as they are useful for establishing baselines. Blackmagic has provided this chart in the camera manual. To me, this illustrates the dual native ISO characteristics in regards to dynamic range. For this video, we're interested in this part of the chart. My first question is, when shooting BRAW, is ISO metadata or is ISO processed or burned into the file? Here's our setup, shot in Blackmagic RAW at the different ISOs as noted. Now I did run it through Resolve to do a simple output, but no adjustments were made. These three shots were reset to 3200 ISO in Resolve. You can see the original ISO value. To me, they look identical. When we go to Resolve, if we do rate the camera between 1250 and 6400 ISO, as you can see, we can adjust the ISO ratings. So again, this is another indication that ISO is metadata. It's not burned into the camera if you're between 1250 and 6400 ISO in this test. Above 6400 ISO, we see that it is grayed out. So when we do shoot above 6400, we cannot change it in post so that the camera is burning in the ISO. So what's the difference if we expose properly at different ISOs? We're at 3200 ISO, and then 12,800, and finally 25,600 ISO. In this simple test, we can clearly see how muddy the shadows have become. What about noise reduction? Our baseline at 3200 ISO has no noise reduction, but at 12.8 and 25.6, we do have a fair amount of spatial noise reduction. When we stack the images, the high ISO shots are definitely smoother, but we don't gain any detail in the shadows. What about 400 versus 3200 ISO in the shadows? If you have enough light to expose at an ISO 400 without underexposing, then it definitely gives you less noise in the shadows. If you run out of light while shooting ISO 400, and in this example we're 3 stops under, the image completely falls apart and it takes quite a bit of work to make something out of it. This section has the classic over and underexposure shots. Now I did minimal correction work on Resolve, namely trying to keep the gray in the middle and prevent the B-board and curtains from clipping. We shot this at the native 3200 ISO with BRAW in 3:1 compression. I'll let this play and you can make your own observations. Now 3 stops over, the B-board is definitely clipping already. So 3 stops over, we are clipping. My takeaway on this test is that if I'm using an incident light meter, I should be okay 2 stops over or 2 stops under the rated 3200 ISO. Now let's look at noise reduction. Here's our original shot at dusk, and now we have some temporal noise reduction, and here is spatial noise reduction. Here's another look side by side with 100% magnification. The noise in the Pocket 4K doesn't really bother me because it does kind of feel like film, but for this shot I would probably lean more towards the temporal noise reduction as opposed to spatial noise reduction. Here's my son watching YouTube videos, shot at 3200 ISO, no noise reduction. And now we'll take a look at temporal noise reduction, same shots. Of course we will do enlargement side by side in just a moment. And here we have spatial noise reduction. This one doesn't seem to pulse as much as the outdoor shot. As always, you'll need to do your own test because as I can see here, temporal and spatial noise reductions, they tend to favor or benefit different shots. That wraps up our initial low light test with the Pocket 4K shooting Blackmagic RAW. And as mentioned earlier, we're going to do something very similar shooting ProRes because of course ProRes we will be locking in our ISO when we shoot it. If this information was helpful, please subscribe and we'll see you on the next one.